Hello, everybody. This is Zach at it again. I'm your host, Zach Cooley, and I'm honored to have on the phone with me today one of my dearest friends in the world, and one of the dearest friends in the world to the Wytheville community and the Southwest Virginia community. She is the former site director for Congressman Rick Boucher. And my mother put it better than anybody ever could when she said that the people in Washington and the people in Southwest Virginia alike did not know how good they had it because Linda DiYorio was there. And I am honored to have Linda DiYorio on the phone with me today. Thank you, my dear friend, for doing this for me.
Well, thank you, Zach. It's a privilege to talk with you tonight.
Well, I know that as you just said before we hit the record button, you don't like to be in the front row and you don't seek out the spotlight, so I appreciate you doing this for me.
You know I would.
Well, and as I would for you. We have that kind of a friendship. We just connected immediately, and I think we're fated to be friends throughout the rest of this life, easily.
Well, I'm counting on that.
So, the DiYorio family has been great friends of mine for my entire life. Your husband, John, and your son, Chris, and your grandson, Gabe, are all great friends of mine. But I have always been amazed and grateful for the things that you've accomplished when you worked with Congressman Boucher. You did many, many great things. Congressman Boucher was a great advocate for people with disabilities, and did many, passed many things that made it easier for those of us with physical challenges. So I'm very grateful for those things that he did personally. One of the great things you did for me personally was probably the greatest honor of my career, and that was for Emily and I to go to Richmond for the first time in my life to the state capitol when I was invited by your friend and mine, Mr. Bill Leidy, the former gubernatorial chief of staff. You had got me connected to him. I guess it would be about 2 years ago now. I needed somebody that knew Queen Elizabeth, and he had arranged her trip to Virginia in 2007, and then I did a review of his memoir that had not come out yet, and he was so impressed with that he invited me to Richmond to moderate his book talk at the state library, which to this day is the biggest honor of my career. It still astounds me that I'm acquainted and now send a Christmas card every year to Mr. Leidy. He's a phenomenal person, and he thinks just as highly of you as I do. So,
well, thank you, Zach.
So, thank you for that, and thank you for all that you do for our community. But we are here today to talk about another legendary figure in a lady that has done a great deal for our nation, and that is Miss Ethel Kennedy. She passed away back in October, was it?
I believe it was. Just recently.
Was that when? I don't have the date pulled up, but I believe it was back in October, and she was just recently interred beside her husband, California Senator Robert F. Kennedy, who was brother to President Kennedy, if there's anybody out there who doesn't know. And she was present at his assassination. She was at his side when he was shot and killed in 1968 after winning the California primary. He was campaigning to be president, and I believe had he gone on, would have been president. So
highly likely.
Yes.
That was a real tragedy.
So let me ask you this. You have been obviously working as you have worked for a long time, many, many decades, and John, your husband, has been chairman of the Wytheville Democrats for many, many decades. Do you remember much, as you were pretty young during the Kennedy assassination and all that, but do you remember much about what the climate was like back then here locally when President Kennedy was running?
Well, I actually did not live here locally when that happened, Zach.
That's not right.
I was a freshman in high school, and I think I grew up in Smith County, and I attended Rich Valley High School, and I remember we were going into our final period of classes that day, and I think it's kind of like the 9/11 incident. I believe about everybody that you asked, what were you doing when you heard that President Kennedy had been shot? We were going to our last period class, and the principal came on the intercom and announced that the president had been killed, and immediately our band director got the band together, and we met at the flagpole there at the high school, and, you know, had the national anthem and lowered the flag. And to this day, gosh, that's been, I'm not going to tell you how many years it's been since I was a freshman in high school, but it's a lot. I have just very vivid memories of what we did during that period of time when we heard that the president had been killed. But of course, you were not born at that time, but we were out of school for several days, and people were glued to their television. We watched everything that we could, and it wasn't that we were watching TV to be entertained. It was that we were watching because we were so grief-stricken, and we just wanted to grab every moment we could on that horrible occasion. So as far as and I think anybody I've talked to, regardless of their politics, I think felt the same way. That it was the country was grief-stricken. That's all I can say. It was just a terrible, terrible time for the country.
And as a journalist, that is the most fascinating time, as tragic as it was, to be a journalist, because it was a matter of when Oswald was shot. There were two pictures taken by two different photographers. One had captured Ruby with the gun raised in the air, and 6/10 of a second later, another one captured him with the gun pointed at Oswald, and Oswald holding his stomach, being shot, and that made the difference in winning the Pulitzer Prize. Journalism itself does not have the integrity today that it did at that time. And I think, sadly, regardless of who would be in the White House today, if a president was assassinated, we would not come together as a country. We would be blaming each other, and there would be a war. It would be humanity against itself in a war today. And I think that's...
Well, I'd like to think that we would still grieve for the loss to the country.
And let's hope that we would. Let's hope so.
Yeah, I think we would, Zach. I have a lot of Republican friends. Well, everybody knows I'm a strong Democrat.
Very much so.
But I also have a lot of Republican friends, and I look at myself, and I think, even when there's I'm thinking. Remember the members of Congress that were playing? I think it was softball, and one of the members got shot. Do you remember that? It was several years ago.
No, I don't. I don't recall.
Well, they were out on the softball field, and just a random person shot one of the members, and I think anything like that shocks the country. I think you have to be pretty cold-hearted,
right?
If you do not have deep feelings when something like that happens, because it's a reflection on our country.
But everything is so sensationalized to this day. Television, film, everything is such shock value that I would like to think that, as you say, that we would come together as a country. And it's sad that it takes something like 9/11 to fill the churches and
right.
or to not even to fill the churches, just to bring the people together, you know.
Well, we just cut on the 6:30 news, and there was another shooting today at a private school, and a teacher and a student were shot, and you know that I'm almost 100% sure of what I'm saying, that tears at every American's heart when they hear news like that.
Yeah, and if you're a parent, which I am, of one child, I have one, that's all, one little girl, and she is everything to my wife and me.
Sure.
And to send her out into a place where she is to be protected and looked over while she is in our absence, it is frightening. I'm very thankful to live in a community like Wytheville, where we take care of our own and look after each other, and I'm very grateful to be embraced as I am by this community. That's why I have this career that I have, and that's why I'm talking to you today, and that's why we are talking about Miss Ethel Kennedy, who endured many personal tragedies, including the loss of her husband. But you had the honor of meeting the Kennedy family matriarch when she came to the Edith Bowling Wilson Museum as part of a campaign for President Obama. You want to talk about that experience just a little bit?
Well, you probably won't remember this either, because it was kind of before your time, but there was a young fella named Don Byer who served as Lieutenant Governor of Virginia, and he traveled throughout Southwest Virginia, and we got to know him quite well. And one day, it was a Saturday morning, his wife called me and said, Ethel Kennedy would like to come to Southwest Virginia to campaign for President Obama. Well, at that time, he wasn't president. And she said, I'll be coming with her, but I wondered if you could line up several stops for her. So they were going to be coming the next week, so we kind of had to get busy, but they flew into Marion, and we had a little gathering there for her, and then I called Farron Smith, and we thought that she would really enjoy going to the Edith Bowling Wilson Museum. And so I got to go down to Marion and pick Miss Kennedy and her son up. His name was Max Kennedy. I think it's Maximilian, but they all called him Max, so that's what we did. And so they were in them. I guess the interesting thing about her, she just is so approachable, so appreciative, kept thanking us for, meeting her, having a gathering for her. And she would say a few words to the group, and then she would introduce her son. But the interesting thing in the car, Zach, was on the way from Marion to Wytheville. She and Max were in the back seat, and he had just that I think the day before released a new book that he had written. And she told him, she said, I didn't sleep last night because I stayed up most of the night reading your book. And she went on to tell him how good she thought, what a good job he had done. But it was just interesting to hear them going back and forth discussing this book he had written. And the other thing that kind of tickled me coming up the road, it was in the fall, it was in October, and excuse me, Williams Orchard had just, they were in the middle of their fall festival, and they had that big pumpkin patch there. Well, she could not believe that there'd be that many pumpkins in one field. And she just went on and on and on about, and that was really a sight for her, which we take for granted every day.
Yes.
But I guess when you live in the city, it's a little different from our country surroundings. Yeah. We kind of take it for granted when we go by those big pumpkin patches. But she was just fascinated with that pumpkin patch. Well, we came on up to Bowling Wilson and had a little gathering there for her. And one of the people that was traveling with her said, Miss Kennedy's getting a little tired. She was, of course, in her 80s then. Mm-hmm. And said, we need to find a place for her to rest a few minutes. Well, Lord, my head just started spinning. I'm thinking, who could I walk up to their door and say, would you mind letting Ethel Kennedy rest at your house? And I'm thinking, well, you can't really do that. And I thought, well, I'll just take her home with us. So we did, and she actually laid down in the bedroom and took a nap. In the meantime, I took her son Max to a radio interview that he had in Pulaski. And I think John told you this story, that when she got up, she said, could you fix me a cup of tea? Well, John DiYorio never fixed a cup of tea in his life. And I think I had some of those family bags in the cabinet, which, would make a pot of tea.
Right.
But I think that's the tea bag he gave her. And in sitting, we've got all these mugs in the cabinet that, are from the Chamber of Commerce and the banks and the insurance offices.
Sure.
And, wherever you pick them up. Well, I came home and he was telling me about fixing her tea, and I said, well, what kind of cup did you use? And he said, well, I just got one of those coffee mugs out of the cabinet. But the interesting thing about that was she had her tea, and then she got up and walked to the sink and rinsed out her cup.
Right.
And several of the people there was, 3 or 4 people traveling with her. Several of them, we'd fix them soft drinks and water and whatever, coffee. And they had just set their glass or cup on the counter. She rinsed their cups out too.
Yes.
Now, would you believe that of somebody that is as, what would you say?
Elite as Ethel Kennedy.
Yeah. But she was so easy to take care of. She was very appreciative. She, she loved looking out the back window. Of course, it looks out on a field, which, she doesn't see that often. But she just was a really special lady. And, it was an honor to have her here.
And I know that, I didn't even know until you posted it. And you posted years ago. I don't even know if Bella had been born at this point. You posted that what an honor. I think you might have posted it whenever the documentary came out that Rory, the youngest of her children, did on her, that was called Ethel, which is a great film if you haven't watched that. It's a really good film. And I think you may have posted it at that time that it was an honor to have Ethel Kennedy in our home. And I was flabbergasted. So the next time I saw you out in public, I think I was at Shoney's, and you and John were having lunch with April and Chris, and my wife and daughter were there, and I said, please tell me about your visit with Ethel Kennedy, because
it was really well, it was an honor to have her, but to get to know somebody like Ethel Kennedy, to entertain her in your home, and sit down and talk, and just like you and I are doing now.
Yeah, what a gift.
Yes, it is. Yes,
what a gift. And you in your position have probably met a lot of very important, a lot of very renowned political figures, but I'm sure Ethel Kennedy ranks right up there as one of the greatest honors of your career.
Absolutely, it would be. I don't know. I think I might have mentioned this to you one time before, but we were really we thought it was typical Ethel Kennedy. But when Ted Kennedy died, and at the funeral they had a covering on his casket. And one corner had gotten turned up, and she got up from her seat and went up and just very casually fixed the covering on his casket. I just thought that was so Ethel Kennedy. She didn't make a big deal about it. She didn't call a staff person to come in and straighten it out. She just very ladylike got up, walked casually to the casket, and fixed the cover. I just thought that was so Ethel.
She was the matriarch of the family, and she took that very seriously.
She did. She did not want that to not be right.
No matter how she may have been treated or overlooked, overshadowed within the Kennedy family, because when you hear the name Kennedy, you automatically think of drama sometimes with the president and the first lady, and what are their secret lives together, and there's still publishing. It's been over 60 years since he passed away, and they're still publishing these tell-all books. It's like, how can you even know to write this book? You couldn't have been alive when it happened, but these tabloid-type books that are coming out about these secret and these affairs and Robert Kennedy's personal escapades and whatever, but Ethel was in none of it.
Well, not only that, she may not have been the most loved, but I'm talking family-wise.
Right.
But I can tell you this: she was probably the most respected.
Yes, and she may have not received that love, but she gave it, whether she received it or not.
She sure did. She sure did.
And people don't know, she outlived at least 2 of her children, and I can't imagine having to live in this world without my child. I would just be so ready to join them, But and even her grandchildren, and she had loss after loss after loss after loss, and these are things that people don't recover from losses of less magnitude that she had, that she endured.
That is true, but I see her as a very, very strong woman.
Yes.
To have dealt with what she did over, having the size family she did, to look after that many children, particularly after he was killed, because she had babies.
Right. The last one wasn't even born when he was killed.
And to, just pick up and carry on, and it just makes you just admire her so much.
Indeed, and somebody of her wealth, who was born into wealth with the Skakel family, never had to worry about poverty. She very keenly felt
absolutely
what it felt like to. She went to these communities where people had nothing, and she saw the injustice in it, and she never stopped campaigning for those causes that she believed in.
That is true.
And she was doing it up until, I guess, the final couple of months of her life. She was appearing at these places and rooting for those less fortunate than her. And you may or may not have seen that from even the president to the degree that she was. And as a result, in her rising above all the drama, she was my favorite in the Kennedy clan, and had a lot of respect for her. Thought she was a great lady.
Yeah.
And
I think she's pretty high at the top of my list too, Zach.
Yep. And you are another lady that'll always be at the top of my list, and I thank you for talking with me this evening.
Well, I've enjoyed it, and I hope to see you soon. I got your Christmas card, and I love it.
Oh, well, that means a lot to me. I'm so glad you got it. Please
I sure did.
Please know, I know you know how special you are to me, but please know that you are special to my wife as well, and we are very grateful for all you've done for us.
I appreciate that, and I hope to hear her sing again soon.
Oh, well, we will try to make that happen for you, and let's do lunch very soon, because I've got more things that we can talk about.
Okay, we'll do that, Zach.
Yeah, maybe when it gets a little warmer, we can do it.
Right,
so,
I would love that.
Well, I love you very much, and thank you so much. All right.
Okay.